Hey, welcome to Many Roads Traveled, and I'm Tamara, and I guess I'll be your virtual tour guide. On my 30,000 mile road trip I did from Paris to Cape Town and back to Nairobi. Welcome to episode 14. And on today's episode, we're basically going up and down the Nile. So we go from Luxor to Cairo, from Cairo back to Luxor, then to Aswan, and then into Sudan. So we cover about 775 miles on this episode. Taking us up to 8,775 miles along the way. Okay, so pick up where we left off last episode. It's day 80. And like I said, we just got the night train from Luxor back to Cairo because we had to keep coming back to Cairo. I think this was our fourth time in Cairo because we've been waiting for our Sudan visa for weeks. So we headed back to our favorite place to stay, Hotel Select in Cairo. And then we headed out to the Sudan embassy with fingers crossed, toes crossed, everything crossed. Just like, oh, can we please get this visa and get going? Because at this point, we've been in Egypt for about 4 weeks or so. Anyways, we get to the embassy. And hallelujah, our names were the second and third last on the list for that week. But we got our visa, so we paid our $50. So happy because we could get going on our African adventure. So we're like, okay, great. So we got to get back on the train tonight. So headed over to the train station because we wanted to get trained straight to Aswan. Of course, the train was full. So yeah, that's why we had to go back to Luxor. So we're like, okay, great. We went back to Hotel Select, said goodbye to everyone, picked up our bags, and headed to the train station. Got on the train, left about 7 p.m. And it's about, I think, 9 hours or so to get to Luxor. And we seem to be in the carriage full of singing Muslim women most of the night. So that was fun. No sleep. So the next day, 4:30 in the morning, we arrive in Luxor. Dude, where we stayed before in Luxor, he owned this hotel called Happy Land. It's a big fat Egyptian guy. And he was there to greet us again. He's like, oh my gosh, how are you? So we went back with him to his hotel, and he even gave us a better rate. I think we only had to pay about 4.5 Egyptian pounds, which at the time it was about 3.5 Egyptian pounds to the dollar. So that was great. And we've got breakfast thrown in this time. Nowadays, it's about 16 Egyptian pounds to the dollar. So yeah, we kind of just crashed because, like I said, we didn't get any sleep. And then later on, we went because the hotel's right kind of in the middle of a market. So we thought, well, let's get rid of some of our warm winter clothes, like fleeces and things like that. Probably a mistake to get rid of my fleece now, looking back. But anyway, so I went to the market, did a bit of bartering, and I traded a fleece and a couple other things, and I got 3 cartouches, like necklaces for gifts. So that was okay. And then we being able to get the train later that day to Aswan. So that was about 5 hours. And then we went to the Aswan Palace Hotel to stay there, and we found out that our friends Duncan and his sister Beth, who had come over for a couple of weeks, they were at the hotels, but we didn't get to Aswan until about midnight. But we were so excited to see them, so we just woke them up at midnight, like, hey, we're here. And Duncan we had been traveling with him on and off for about a month, and we is me and my friend Casey, who I left Canada with, and we've been traveling together for a few months at this point. So it was nice to see him. We were reunited. So the next day we were up early, and I went for a walk actually by myself. And I really liked Aswan. It was a smaller and prettier than Luxor. In the Nile, there's all these like dotted little green islands, really cute. So it was a little bit more relaxed than Luxor. Like Luxor's full on. And if you want to hear more about Luxor and Cairo, just go back to the last couple episodes. The last one especially, it's about Luxor, and then there's a couple about Cairo. However, the Egyptian harassment continued in Aswan. It was more like foreign, I guess, harassment. So everywhere you walked, you hear Felucca, Felucca, Felucca to go out on a Felucca boat ride, which we had done already in Luxor. So it just got a little bit annoying. And unfortunately, we found out that the ferry that we needed to get from Aswan to Wadi Halfa in Sudan didn't leave until Sunday, and it was Thursday. So it was also day 82. So, and there's not a lot to do in Aswan. So we're like, well, we had no choice really. So we had to stay there for 3 days. It was like, okay. And luckily we also found out you had to catch the train from Aswan to the high dam, because that's where the ferry left, from the dam. So Casey and I thought, okay, we'll just go to the market and stock up on food so we can make our lunches and dinners just to save a little bit of money. Although we also ate quite a lot of kosheri as well, because kosheri is kind of the local main dish. And it's delicious and quite filling and really cheap. It's like only 50 cents or something like that, really cheap. And it's kind of like a mix of macaroni and macaroni noodles and lentils and spices and tomato sauce. It's really good, really filling. So yeah, so we stocked up on our food. And then we went for our last dinner with Duncan and Beth because they were heading back to Cairo. And then went to a cafe and had some shisha pipes and played some backgammon, which is the usual thing you do most nights or days in Cairo, which was cool. I really liked it. And I usually get quite a big buzz off the shisha pipes because you get different flavors like apple flavored tobacco or honey flavored tobacco. And it was so smooth, you didn't even know you're smoking, because I had just started smoking in Cairo. So it was quite nice. So the next day I decided to go for a walk by myself. So I was walking along and I saw these little boats like crossing the Nile. So I was like, oh, I'll just go jump on one of those. And of course I was only Westerner because I was on these little local boats to cross the Nile. And it's, like I said, it's so beautiful. It's a desert. So it's really, ready sandstone colors, and the sun, with the sun, it changes colors all the time. So it's really, really pretty. So yeah, so I was walking along, of course, like a camel dude who was trying to sell me a ride on a camel, which I had done at the pyramids in Cairo, so I didn't need to do that again either. But he just wouldn't leave me alone for ages. So I saw there's a big kind of hill or a small mountain. So I just decided I'd climb that, get away from him. So climbed up there, and the views were beautiful. Like I said, you see all the Nile, all the little islands and the desert. And then I found a little niche in the cliffs and just kind of sat down, and it was just nice to have some alone time and some peace and quiet. And yeah, I just stayed there for about an hour or so and read and had my Walkman on, listened to tunes. It was great. But of course, in Egypt, I couldn't go anywhere for very long by myself. So I just see this little head pop up about, I don't know, a couple 100 meters from me. I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Like, no one else was around at all. And this guy just comes closer to me till he's about 50, 100 meters away from me, but just stands there and just watches me for like ages. And I'm like, okay, this is driving me crazy. So I got up and just was, walking around. And he followed me for 2 hours at a distance, but still, it was just annoying me, like driving me crazy. I was like, oh, well, screw this. I'll just head back. And now just a quick sponsor break. People ask me all the time, how can you afford to travel so much? Well, affiliate marketing is one of them. And listen, my friend James put together an amazing done-for-you system, training, tools, email follow-ups, everything's included. Best thing is it is free to join. And you could start making money from 7 different income streams in this system in literally 2 minutes. Okay, so head on over to manyroadstravel.com/rapid and you can get started today. All right, back to the show. So on my way back, he then came right up to me. And I was like, what do you want? Like, why have you been following me for 2 hours? Like, it's ridiculous. And he's like, oh, I don't speak no English. And I'm like, well, just piss off. Leave me alone, please. So I sat down to wait him out. But no, he just stood and stared at me. I was like, oh my God. So I just got up and, headed back down the hill. Well, 2 minutes later, he runs up to me like he's never seen me before. And he's like, hello, madam. And touches me on the shoulder. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, leave me alone. Otherwise, I'm going to call the police and you're going to get arrested. Like, I had to mime this out to him. And I pushed him, and he kind of tripped over a rock and fell into the cliff. I mean, not hard, but yeah. And I was like, it just got so much because I'd had 5 weeks of this harassment from Egyptian men, and I was like, enough is enough. I mean, he wasn't hurt, but he finally got the idea and left me alone. So yeah, just jumped back on one of the little local boats, crossed the Nile again, and went back to the hotel because that was the only peace and quiet I got. But of course, Casey's there, so it's not alone time. But at least it was no harassment. Yeah, then we just made dinner in our hotel room because we had these little camping stoves, so that was handy. And then the usual backgammon and shisha pipes. The next day, there's a lot of nice hotels, so I just walked into one, like I was staying there, and they had a pool, so just plopped myself down beside the pool, and just worked on my tan for the day, and just did some reading and some napping. It was really nice. Didn't get asked anything. Hotel room, no. So that was cool. And then, so on day 86, we had to get up early because we had to get the train to the High Dam. So we were at the train station at 6:30 in the morning because that's the train was supposed to leave around then. Nope, didn't leave till 8 in the morning. But so we got to the High Dam at 8:30, and we didn't know where to get the ferry tickets. So we ended up walking across the dam twice, like there, across, and then back, looking just for the ferry tickets. Finally asked someone, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's just there." So and the dam's big; it's a couple kilometers. It's like, okay, with our packs on, which weighed about 22 kilos. So I was like, okay, idiots, it's right down there. Anyway, so we bought our ferry tickets and changed our Egyptian pounds for Sudanese pounds. And then we set sail about 4 p.m. And at the time, it was just a big ferry boat. There wasn't any classes or not many seats kind of thing. So people just laying on the floor of the ferry. But luckily the captain took a liking to me since we were the only Westerners on the ferry, except for this French couple who we'd actually met in Siwa Oasis before. So a few weeks before. So that was it. So it was 4 Westerners and about 500 local Africans. So the captain came up to me and he liked me. So he took us to this kind of, I don't know, I'll call it VIP cordon off area. So we could put our sleep on the floor there, which is great. It was fine. But it was so windy. So I ended up building like a fort around us with our backpacks and everything. It was crazy. And you get food on the ferry. But it takes about 18 hours to get to Sudan. So a lot of time to kill. But like I said, you're still looking at the desert and it's beautiful views and everything. And then, so the next day we finally got into Sudan, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is our second country in Africa. And it was the 8th country on the trip. And that's when I really felt my African adventure journey was starting. I don't know why Egypt didn't. I think Egypt felt more Middle Eastern. So it was really quite exciting. And then to get to Wadi Halfa in Sudan, which you can hear all about in next Thursday's episode. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a step along the way. So, of course, now it's time for Tam's Top Tips. Oh, no, sorry. So just to summarize my time in Egypt, because, we went to almost everywhere in Egypt, really, those 5 weeks waiting for this bloody Sudanese visa. I mean, Egypt has a lot to offer. It's amazing. Obviously, especially with the historical and archaeological monuments and sites. It's amazing. Like Luxor is crazy. It'll blow your mind. And, even the Egyptian Museum, like when you're seeing places like the pyramids and you're like, these are like 4,000 to 5,000 years old. It's amazing. It really is. So that blew my mind. That was really, really cool. I also really loved the Sinai because it was just chilling out on the beach and stuff like that. And historically, for me, it was the first time I ever had a joint, marijuana. So that was it. That was cool, I guess, for me. And I also like Siwa Oasis. That was, again, another very unique experience being literally on this, it's like a little island in the sea of the Sahara Desert. So mine is, almost being attacked by stray dogs and the donkey boy. You have to listen to Siwa Oasis about that episode to hear more. I really liked it. The only drawback, of course, was the constant sexual harassment and also I call like tourism harassment, especially in Luxor and Aswan for those, but kind of all of Egypt for sexual harassment and and just being, I'm traveling with a guy who we said like we were married. Didn't matter. So, but there was a lot of times I was on my own. So for solo female travelers, like, just be prepared for that and just don't take any crap, really. would be my advice. But also it was really cool. I actually really liked Cairo as well for a big city, and it was really cool being there during Ramadan and being invited to Ali, the guy we met, to have breakfasts at 6 p.m. with his family in the streets of Cairo. That was really cool too. So, I mean, if you took away the harassment, I would have loved Egypt. I mean, I still loved Egypt, but that was just a pain in the ass, basically. Okay, so now it's time for Tam's top tips. So, tip number one would be bargain for everything in the markets, especially. And if you want to, you're buying tours like gifts or stuff like that, just bargain for everything, because whatever the price they say, it's extortionate. So whatever they say, I would go with about a third of the price of that, and then kind of meet in the middle. And also when Egyptians come up to you and say they want to do a favor, well, just know that they want something in return, which is usually a tip. So my advice is negotiate first about this favor so you don't have any confrontations afterwards. So tip number two, for the trains between Cairo, Luxor, and Aswan, there's 3 types. So there's the deluxe sleeper, the overnight sleeper, and the AC Express daily. But it's for some reason really hard for travelers, like foreigners, to get on the day one. So you'd have to get a night, like one of the night expresses. So for the deluxe sleepover express, it's $80 to get to either Luxor or Aswan. It's the same price for a couple. So that's for 2 bunks, I guess. And if you're solo, it's $110. Now for the other one, Express Sleeper, which is what we got, it is $17 for first class or only $8 for second class. And you know me, I'm all about the budget. And second class was okay. And like I said before, it takes about 9 hours. And if you have a student card, you get 33% off the trains and everything else in Egypt, like pyramids, museums. So it's really helpful to have a student card. And so the express leaves at 7:45 at night, I think. And then tip number 3, for the ferry between Aswan and Wadi Halfa, like I said, remember you have to go to the high dam. So going to Sinan, they leave on Wednesdays, and then leaving Sudan to Aswan, they leave on Sundays. And as I said before, it takes about 18 hours. Now, if you're going from Egypt to Sinan, you must have the Sudanese visa. I think it's probably easier to get nowadays. So you can either get it in Cairo for $100 or in Aswan for $50. Yeah, so second class tickets are $17 and first class $26. Like I said, there was no classes when I went there. It's just a big old boat with hundreds of people on it. And then for solo female travelers, yes, be prepared for the harassment, because you'll get it even now, I'm sure. I mean, Egyptian women even got together and made this app about, I think it's called Harass Me or something like that. Have a look for that. And that just, I don't know, what you put in if you were harassed, you put in where you were at times, I don't know. But just stand your ground. I mean, I threw a few punches, I pushed a few guys, but I mean, you don't have to get physical, but stand your ground, make a scene, especially if there's other people there, because they don't do that to Muslim women, usually, anyways. So they know it's not right. So make a stand, don't be a victim kind of thing. And I mean, sexual, like you just get verbally, sometime like, it's not hugely physically a problem. I mean, I did get my ass grabbed in Cairo. I have to listen to that episode. But besides that, it wasn't too physical. It was just verbal. And like I said, the staring and following and all that. It's just tedious. But so be prepared, take stand, and you'll be okay. And if any doubt, like I said, there's so many, well, say after COVID, other tourists and travelers in Cairo and Luxor, and you'll meet other people, so you can always hook up and travel together for your time in Egypt. Okay, so I think that's a wrap for this episode. So we'll see you in Sudan next Thursday. Make sure you subscribe and leave your leave a review. It'd be awesome. I'd give a shout out for those. So okay, we will catch you next Thursday. Take care and safe travels, one road at a time.